I'm Pasquale Patrizio, a professor of obstetrics, gynecology and reproductive science at the University of Miami Miller School of Medicine, and I'm also the division chief of reproductive endocrinology and infertility. Today we'll be talking about a new phenomenon that is taking place in the United States, but also abroad. Excuse me. That is the phenomenon of more and more private equity firms that are entering the market of in vitro fertilization and therefore are developing these new business models offering assisted reproductive technologies. And I would like to discuss the pros and the cons of this phenomenon, and in particular what is going to be the potential consequences of such a practice on academic centers and also on practices that are still run by physicians, with the old concept of having their own private practice, but with the big risk now that having this big enterprise competing for market share, there is a risk of completely obliterating this type of market for private physicians. And therefore, the way that in vitro fertilization and assisted reproductive technology were offered, there is a possibility that they are going to be disappearing this practice. And that will be, in my opinion, a very bad thing that is going to happen. So basically, when I say that there are pros and cons of this private enterprise, this venture capitalist firm that are buying more and more and more clinics, becoming these large chains offering services, is that what are the cons? The cons is that one, the possibility that the market share for small practice, and most importantly, particularly for me that I'm an academician, this rise of industry of IVF with the private equity firm is going to be difficult for academic centers to compete. And therefore there is a risk that training of future reproductive endocrinologists is going to be put in jeopardy, because according to the AGCMA, which is the body that governs the training that has to be done through academic centers, only through academic centers is possible to do training for REI fellows. So, what are these negatives in addition to lack of training? Another negative is that the merger and acquisition of clinical practice will create difference in the buying power for media products, for all these drugs and all the equipment that are needed, because there will be big chains. So they will have a much more negotiation power with these supply chains. There is also the risk affordable options will be not so much on the forefront, because a privately owned venture capitalist firm, they need to try to capitalize as much as possible on the treatments. Therefore, they will start to offer more expensive treatment. They will start to add all this yet to be validated add-on such PGTA, freezole. So they will make sure that the cycle of in vitro fertilization is going to produce as much as revenue possible, because now there are many shareholders, not only physicians that are working in the practice, that are going to be dividing the income. And in addition to that, having this private equity firm that are controlling the practices, they also make the training of embryologists, the training of colleagues that are working in their practice, not really a priority, because the priority is only to try to capitalize as much as possible by doing many cycles. And additional things that can be limiting the choice of patients is, for example, if a patient is of advanced maternal age, there will be, in this type of enterprise, a push towards using egg donation much faster than in private practice or in academic centers. So therefore, these are all things that are negative. Like I said before, even employee health, job security is not going to be as good in these networks as it is in independent clinics. And finally, I also want to make as another point that is a cons, is that it is very difficult to export reproductive success across many clinics, even though they are under the same brand. But a clinic that is staffed by colleagues, let's say in New York, even though it's the same clinic that is also located in another state, but there are different physicians, different staff. So it's difficult to really produce the same type of a success. Now, there are some potential positive from this, and I want to list a couple of them, of course. The inflow of investor capital has definitely made sure that there are more centers, in the United States. But these more centers could pass the advantage of buying big, therefore having a less opportunity to pay more for material that they need. They could pass this discount on to the patient, but has not been happening yet. They could have so much voice, for example, from a political standpoint, in trying to see why many states in the United States are still not covering infertility as a health benefit. So having such a force, because they are united, many patients will be part of this enterprise, why not to start to lobby politicians and try to see whether or not they will be able to pass bills that are going to cover infertility. So that's a pros yet to be seen, of course. Also the possibility that research could be a benefit added for this enterprise, because they will have so much data that are going to be accumulating that therefore this will be easy data mining studies to make sure that there will be new development in our field. And in addition, they will have so much more capital to invest in so-called R&D, research and development. So these are all pros. And at the end of the day, we need to see what type of a compromise we are going to reach. It's definitely changing the world of IVF, and the entry of private equity firm in the health industry is not only particular to and peculiar to reproductive medicine, but also in other fields, dermatology, radiology, dentistry, orthopedics. So it's really a very different times, and we will see what the future will hold. But for us, and for me particularly as an academician and also with the degree in bioethics, the most important thing is always to allow patients access to care and have the patient at the center of the attention for wherever we do, keeping in mind not to exploit an already very vulnerable population.